Okay, if everybody will start finding their seat, we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's call this our Committee of Education to order. Look around, we've got a quorum. We're glad that you guys have been here. I'm looking at some of y'all's lunches with somewhat envy. You know, I was with Leadership Gordon, and we ate chicken fingers in a hurry while we were meeting with them. But thank you, committee members. I know it's busy and a quick day. There's a lot of other meetings going on, so I won't waste your time. I want just committee also want to talk to you about two things. You know, we have subcommittees in this committee that are very active in work. You know, you're invited to any of those. You know, you're welcome to ask questions of the bill sponsors and speakers in those. You know, only the people who are members of the subcommittee will vote, though. But I want you to know that you're welcome to them, to come and listen and talk and do those deep dives in with the bill sponsor and the people that surround them. You know, because in this full committee, we only allow the bill sponsor to talk, and it puts a lot of pressure on that bill sponsor to know his bill, and which is just fine with me. I want to call on Chairman Belton right here. He's going to talk to you about their videos.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Number 2018.
Oh, excuse me. There you go.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Last year, myself, Chairman Coleman, Chairman Nix, Representative Dickerson, and Representative Glanton got together and did these Teachers Matters videos. And what they're basically saying is it's not policy, it's not politics. It's just saying we love our teachers. And I put on in your document the kind of the guidelines we're using here. And I wanted to recognize Justin Speck. Everybody, Justin, go ahead and stand up. So he is a guy that you can talk to about getting these videos done for you, and I hope everyone on this committee will do one for yourself. And Justin is next to Betsy in the front every day on the floor, so he's not a hard person to get a hold of. He's next to the copier there. So I hope all of you will avail yourselves to this. And again, the matter is we love our teachers, and we, you know, either tell a story about a teacher that influenced your life, or just how important teachers are to you, and then we'll disseminate those stories to the teachers in your district and hopefully throughout the state. Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, ma'am?
Hang on just a second, ma'am. You're two? There you go. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so also could it be about a teacher who's a teacher of one or more of your children?
Yes, ma'am. This is what a
Yeah.
good teacher story. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it. Chairman Belton's got a great list of questions that you can use to come up with your 2 or 3 minute thing, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you,
Chairman. Very
Jaspers.
effective. I appreciate it. Mr. Vice Chairman Chokas, we would call on you to assign some bills to committee. Have we given him the list? If you would go ahead, you are number 22.
Yes, sir.
If you assign some bills to subcommittee.
Okay, cool. We've got House Bill 12 assigned to academic support, and we also have House Bill 367 also assigned to academic support. Those are the only two that I see at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, members, if you'll look in your nice blue folder that they've created for you, if you'll look, you've got a bill, House Bill 68, and it's LC 337585. And we have with us fine gentleman from Cobb County, Mr. Carson. Would you come to the witness stand, please, and present your bill? We appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy too, and
Hands-free, Mr. Chairman.
you are doggone it. I came out of the elevator and walked right into somebody this morning because I wasn't hands-free.
Is that right?
Because I was texting somebody coming out of the
Well-
elevator.
Does GBA need to have a hands-free law, sir?
No, sir.
Okay, good.
You've got the floor, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, Chairman Jaspers, members of the committee. I bring before you humbly House Bill 68. All this really does is basically put another provision just for some good government and prevent a potential conflict of interest with regard to student scholarship organizations. This has to do with these student scholarship organizations more or less manage for us. They're 501c3 entities, and they manage the scholarships that go out for the Qualified Education Expense Program. But this bill has nothing to do with the credit, has nothing to do with the cap that was raised last year, has nothing to do with that. All this says is that an entity that does accreditation of independent schools cannot also perform student scholarship organization services. So, for example, I'll just, for you, those of you in the subcommittee yesterday, I apologize for being repetitive. If I were auditing my good friend Chairman Belton, so if Dave Belton Enterprises had $1 million of revenue, and I'm a CPA by background, if I engage with him to perform an audit for him, for his company, for Dave Belton Enterprises, and then I say, you know, Dave Belton, why don't you buy these consulting services from me as well? It would be a conflict of interest. And if he didn't buy those consulting services, which, by the way, in most instances, people in my profession and others make a lot more money in that than they do audit and standard good government practice and ethics and so forth, I could be incentivized to not provide as good or clean of an audit. What this bill does is basically says if you accredit a school, you cannot also be its student scholarship organization. That issue has come up. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want to share this. This is an email from one of the 7 approved accreditation agencies that is now soliciting schools that it provides the accreditation and says, are you happy with your SSO? Can we provide those services for them? And it's clearly financial what they're doing. It's part ministry, they say, but there is at least the potential for a conflict of interest as a result. I'm happy to share this.
So this is what you handed out yesterday in
Yes,
subcommittee.
in subcommittee. If anybody,
People,
Matt.
yes, sir, please. Yeah. We'll just pause while they do that.
I apologize, I only made about 10 or 12 copies. I don't know if I have enough for everyone.
Some of us were in the meeting yesterday. We're good.
Okay.
I'm good.
So again, this is just a good government measure. This basically says if you're an accreditation agency as approved by the Department of Education, you cannot also operate either directly or under your structure or what have you, a student scholarship organization. These student scholarship organizations raise funds to provide scholarships for kids in need, and there is, so it prevents that conflict of interest. I'd like to also point out that, as was noted in subcommittee, this bill is supported by the Department of Education.
Thank you. Is that at the end of your testimony? You good? Okay.
Unless
We've
you
got
need me
a
to
few-
answer
Of
questions.
course, we've got questions from members. 2, right here.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chair. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I need to learn about this. Like, how many accreditation agencies are there in Georgia?
The number of accreditation, I can't say that out right. Accreditation agencies as approved by the Department of Education are 7 in regard to this application. Now, if your question is how many others are there,
Well, that's
I
what
imagine
I
there's
wanted, the
dozens.
Department of Education. I mean,
Yes.
that would be the important ones
Yes.
that we would consider. Okay.
Right.
And then how many student scholarship organizations are there accredited by the state?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, or immediately, but in the neighborhood of 25.
Oh, really? That many?
25 to 28, somewhere in there. Even though that market or that the number of scholarships is more, it's my understanding that the number of SSO entities is fewer, because one of the things we did last year was, in addition to transparency, we also lowered their fees.
And what do the student scholarship organizations provide scholarships for? I'm just sorry, I don't.
Okay, so we have in Georgia in Title 20, we have a Qualified Education Expense Program, QEE. And what that does is basically state that along with a tax credit provision in Title 48, which is our revenue and taxation title, basically what those two titles work together with the funding and the administration, it basically says if you, as a Georgia taxpayer, contribute, make a approved monetary contribution to a student scholarship organization, which operates as a 501c3, you receive a dollar-for-dollar tax credit as a result of your contribution. It's not really a donation. I don't want to call it a donation, but it's a contribution. And you, for example, I sign up, and it's a way of basically saying, I want to sign up for this through a student scholarship organization. I write my check to the student scholarship organization for, say, I'm just making a number, $1,000. I write that check. A year later, I get a credit on my Georgia 500 form, income tax form, for $1,000.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was a very good explanation.
Well, I could go into more
Appreciate
detail
that.
if you
I
want.
know, I know. I hear that accounting and coming out in you there. You know, that's great.
We can talk about the lines on the 500 or the 600 if you want.
Chairman Benton, I believe that's you, 27.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill 68, is this a forwarding mechanism, or we already had a problem with this?
We have the potential for a conflict based on the email that I'm circulating a copy of. What I'm circulating documentation of is evidence of one solicitation. What we're trying to do is head off any potential problem later down the road from a good governance standpoint to prevent a conflict of interest. You know, if you remember, I don't know if many of you were watching this, but the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2001 or 2 was all the way going back that far. That was a result of the conflict of interest that numerous accounting firms had in regard to providing consulting services. WorldCom was one, and they were basically getting a clean audit, and because WorldCom was also purchasing millions and millions of dollars of consulting services. With the Enron was another, where the auditors were making tons of money because they were selling consulting services. So Chairman Bilton, what this does is heads off a problem that we know that at least one of these accreditation agencies are soliciting these type of services to the very schools that they accredit.
Okay. One final question, Mr. Chairman. What percentage do these organizations keep for doing the scholarship?
They are allowed by law. It's a step fee. On average, it's less than 7%.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, any other members have any question? Okay, well, at this moment, any committee members would like to speak on this bill? And I accept now a motion do pass. Okay, all those in favor of motion do pass by affirmative, aye. Any opposed, nay. That's do pass. On the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for a good explanation. I appreciate that.
We can go more detailed if you want.
If any member has any, they can certainly see the gentleman. There was another bill, House Bill 32, on
Thank
the
you, Mr. Chairman.
agenda. It's been postponed until our next meeting at this moment. And next, last session or last meeting last Thursday, we had a number of questions on FTE, and we asked Mr. Gary McGibney from DOE to come, and if you'll look on your spot, there is a PowerPoint. He's not going to go all the way through it, but he's going to talk about it. And I appreciate him taking the time to be here to kind of answer some of those questions and that we had in the last meeting about counting our students. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, at the most, an introduction to discussion about FTE, which is full-time equivalent. And in your handout, I'll just go page by page because I think the most important part of it actually is at the end. FT refers to the state funding mechanism based on the student enrollment and the educational services local school systems provide to the students. On page 2, you'll see the Quality Basic Education Act requires local school systems to report student enrollment as FTE. State funding for the operation of instructional programs are generated by the FTE data reported by the local school systems. In order for students to be counted, they must be enrolled on the FTE count date, which is twice, and one is October and one is March, and that's to be the first Tuesday in October and the first Thursday in March, and those dates are within the requirements of state law. And the student must be in attendance at least one of the previous 10 school days. The FTE indicates the student's program for each of the 6 segments of the school day. For example, a student may have gifted one segment and 5 other segments would be in the 4th grade. The education programs are divided into 17 state-funded categories. The FTE funds are earned based on program weights, which is in QBE, and the base amount of the funding received for each FTE is determined by the Georgia General Assembly each year. And on page 4, you'll see the list of the program categories, the 17 categories. On page 5, you will see the program categories and weights. The weights is a ratio based on the 1.00 weight. And now that I've got you this far, you're wondering, well, if I put the program categories and the program weights and state base amount together, what do I end up with? So we provided you 3 examples, beginning on page 7. And on this one, it's pretty straightforward, where the example is 350 students or FTEs in grades 9 through 12, times the weight of 1.000, times the base amount, which is established by the legislature, which for FY19 was $2,620.77. So the calculation is, again, the FTE program times the weight times the base amount, and that's where you get the FTE amount of $917,000. Now, next page, I'll give you another example because it's including special education at the highest weight. In category 4, special education, the highest weight is 5.81. So let's say a school system had 15 FTEs in category 4, special education, at 5.8151 weight times the base amount. That gives you the $228,000 figure. And then the last one is, because not all students are in the same program for 6 segments a day, this is an example of a student, as I mentioned earlier, it has 1 segment of the 6 in gifted, and the other 5 are in the regular education program. So you see, then you have 2 weights that have to be calculated. The 4th grade weight, which is 1.669, 1.037, and then the gifted weight, which is 1.69. So then you add those together, multiply by the base amount, and you see those 2 categories in amounts of 218,000, 135,000. Add those together, and that gives you the FT amount for the local school system.
So this was just a snapshot. And I told Mr. McGibney, I said, that's what we want to do, is a snapshot. I'm going to put my appropriations chairman on the spot for just a minute, very nicely. Chairman Dickey's with us, and I'm going to tell you, committee, one thing. I've got a list here that I keep. It's in my desk, and it says education future issues to look at. And I said, ask the committee, and I wrote, and then someone told me they want to know more about dual enrollment. And I think I'll get Chairman Dickey maybe this summer or fall that we have a joint meeting of us together, and we can. Are you 15? 16. That we could get together and really get a deep dive in a day to make sure the committee understands really just one of the most important things we do. If that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Jaspers. I appreciate it. Yeah, funding is huge, and we've got lots of different areas. And as Dr. McGinnis said, it's that formula is very complicated, and it's been around a long time. So I'm glad you're doing a shallow dive into it here, because you can certainly do a deep dive into it if you wanted to.
Okay. It gets
But,
sticky very quickly.
Yeah, and as you and I both finding out, there's lots of issues with funding and policy and education, and I'm certainly enjoying it too. But yes, did you want to talk about dual enrollment?
Oh, no. One
Oh,
of the
no.
things that I'm going to look at this summer, I had a committee member ask me that they would like to know more about it and the funding of it. And I said, okay. So I wrote this down on my list. So I've got this I keep in my desk, just in, and I'm not showing this to y'all because, you know, this is Rick's list. But you can come ask if you could be on the list too, maybe. But it's really for committee members who have issues and questions that they want answered. And I challenge you just to think of something, and we'll certainly look at it even during the next 2 months or in the summer. But thank you, Chairman. I appreciate you. Chairman Belton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You might ask Dr. McGibney a question?
Oh, please. Yes, sir.
So, briefly, sir, I know you don't want a question, but you hear a lot that you want to, folks want to revise QBE. So, if you did revise QBE, what would be the intent of that? What would you want to do to make this better, if you were to do that? Now, we're not going to do that today, but if you were to do that.
That's a very complex question. It has a very complex answer, and there's as Chairman Dickey said, I'm not sure we're prepared to go into that deep of a conversation, because as you recall, Governor Deal convened a study committee to address that issue, and I attended all those, and those became very complex, and of course you remember the outcome of that committee.
Yes, sir. You still, go ahead.
Just one follow-up. One thing always the school board always concerned about is this idea that you count them on only 2 days. What would be why couldn't you count them on all the days and do the aggregate? What would that be something y'all be for or against?
Well, that's in state law. The count days are in state law, but what I thought you were going to ask is what if they enrolled after the October count? Well, actually, the funding is based on 3 counts. It's based on the October, March, and October, and then the following March is an estimated count for the following fiscal year.
That's one of those, whew, okay, so that's what I'm talking about. And, you know, thank you. That was very eloquent. Appreciate it. But this is something to go by, you know, and something to look at and make sure that you start getting an idea about it. Because I think a lot of times you're going to get questions at home about funding. And it's real important to understand what's really true. Ms. Becky, right here. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to also learn about equalization grants. So either in the future or now or as soon as I.
That'll be in the QBE funding part of it, because that's part of it.
Right, I know, but it's separate. It is separate. Yeah.
Yep,
So,
yep.
thank you so much.
I'm writing that down for you.
Thank you.
Any other committee members have a question, comment? I thank you for being here today. Our meeting's now adjourned. Thank you.